here from Humboldt County in Northern California. Pimm Tripp-Allen is the Vice President of Community Partnerships and Tribal Relations at the Humboldt Area Foundation. She has dedicated her career to working in support of community wellness through programs in higher education, arts, and culture, working with both United Indian Health Services and Indian Tribal Education and Personnel Program. She and her husband, Alme Allen, are cultural practitioners and leaders in the revitalization movement within their lower Klamath River community in Humboldt County. Alme Allen is a Karuk and Yurok artist, designer, cultural consultant, and mentor from the lower Klamath River in Humboldt County, California. With his work deeply rooted in cultural traditions, his art and practice centers around the themes of continuing tribal presence, community healing, and honoring tribal people's connection and commitment to their land. Alme is the co-director and co-founder of Spawning Ground, a newly formed nonprofit organization that supports California Indian healing, wellness, and joy by, quote, revillaging places and spaces through Indigenous arts, presence, and projects. Please join me in welcoming Pimm and Alme to the stage.
Hello, it's good to see you. Naman Alme Allen, Karuk Arad Panamnik Niadam Sipedivti. My name is Alme Allen. I'm from Panamnik Village, Orleans, California, on the Klamath River. The Klamath River that has now been undammed. We are here today because we carry things. In this image here, these medicine baskets that are used in ceremony, they model that. They symbolize that. They physically and they spiritually do that. These are things that we inherited from a young age, and we continue that. We carry that today. This is our place. This is our home place, our ceremonial house. Back home, this is the village of Katamine, Somesbar, California, the Karuk center of the world.
Ayuki Nasa Pimmon Karuk Yurok Ara Ara. My name is Pimm Tripp-Allen. I am also Karuk and Yurok, and happy to be here today. I'm going to let Alme and anybody that knows us personally knows that I usually do most of the talking, but in a big switch today, Alme's going to do a lot of talking, and I'll back him up. We'll be married 30 years this next Tuesday, so maybe in the second part of our life, I'll let him do more of the talking, but we'll see. And again, I think that Alme shared a little bit about the baskets, and I do feel that way. I feel like those baskets that are there, which were used to pack medicine this last year at Katamine and the year before, in a way they really represent the work that Alme and I do as bridge builders or as translators or as folks that are responsible, not just to carry the cultural responsibilities that have been handed to us, but also to carry those cultural responsibilities into other parts of our life. And when I think about the generations that came before us who were working just to heal and come back from a really hard history that we had here in California, our parents and grandparents, when they carried those baskets and were bringing back culture and language, but the work that they did was translating into healthcare and translating to the needs we had in education. And I feel so honored that we've come far enough as a people that we're able now to get to some of the other parts of who we are, and we're starting to translate part of our culture and be able to share that out to bring to the world, to the larger world. So, it's just really telling, I think, that those baskets represent. And who knew that when we were selected to pack medicine when we were young people, that would be when they handed us those baskets and we were praying for those children, who knew that would be like a lifelong, that they were handing us these baskets, that we had a lifelong work ahead of us. And we're so honored to be able to do that. We hope some of you can stay for this afternoon. We have a lot of our young people to share this afternoon as part of our culture sharing, and many of them have also had that opportunity, and I hope that they know they're here today because they're being passed that basket, that we all have we have to carry that together. We each individually hold it, but we do it for the collective.
And as Brian was speaking about the weight that was lifted when we first viewed the galleries, I experienced that. I think we all experienced that at some capacity. And what is that about? It's not just the hard work that we've all invested. It's the work that everybody's invested, the old people, the spirit people that are from the land. We are their hopes and dreams, their wishes. That's in those baskets too. I felt that yesterday, viewing the galleries, and what this all means. Having this venue, having this light that we now step into here at the De Young. It's an incredible story. But before we go on, I just want to give a little bit of the history that California, a catastrophic event happened, and that was the gold rush. And for us in the North, it was a full year later, it was 1850, that everything changed dramatically for us. For the people in Southern California, it was much earlier than that. So to understand, truly understand California history, you have to take this in. You have to acknowledge this, that during this time, that our people were reduced by 90%. There were only 10% of us left. So when we talk about this with passion and emotion, that we are now here, rooted in place, the theme of the California Gallery, rooted in place, in a place of our own, and have this light. How important that is. We don't just carry our own legacy, we carry those. The ones that wish this and hope for something good for us when times were not for them. I think about Uncle Brian Tripp. I think about Rick Bartow. Their entire lives as artists, and now they're gone, but here they are. And how much they would have enjoyed this space. Without them, we couldn't do this. We really and truly couldn't do this. They were the ones that set the stage for us, along with many other artists that were at that foundation point for California Indian art, the lesser known of all the art, markets. They don't know much about California Indian art. And for us, I have to go back to that revitalization period. And I painted this picture of the gloom. Well, let's now understand how we came to be today. That revitalization, that was Pimm and I's childhood in the 70s. Those people that we see, some of them in the contemporary galleries, they were the ones bringing back ceremony. They were bringing back what we now call village. Occupy our spaces, be proud. That's what we're teaching our young people. Take care of it. Take care of the land so it'll take care of you. This is what we bring forward into this vein of art today, was our experience, what the elders gave us. And for me, I just say it's like, sometimes you want the job, you don't get the job. Sometimes the people that didn't want the job end up getting the job. That's me. That's me. It was Pimm's family that were really the shakers and movers then. I honestly say that. I was probably just a dirty-faced Indian kid with a Kool-Aid smile. Somehow I got here. Somehow we got here to this new light here at the De Young to display our work, blending the old with the new. And that's a vision we'll get into later in this discussion. I want to get to that discussion, but to us, that's what it's all about, because sometimes we don't see a difference. We're going to share our culture today, the old art, the dance, the song. That's what's informed and inspired what's in those galleries. And so I just really want to sort of end on that connection and know that, that's what we bring forward. And for each one of our children, and we can say this across Indian country, each one of you are a miracle. Each one of you are a miracle that you're here today. Thank you.
I'm only going to add one little piece, and I think it goes to the nonprofit that Alme and I talked about with Spawning Grounds, and when we were really talking about how to describe it. It had been work we had been doing all along, but we kind of came up with this idea of revillaging. And I think that's what we saw last night for those of you that were here at the opening. We know that when a group of Indian people come together, there's a lot of hard, and there's sometimes tears, but there's always laughter. Even when we have hard moments or heavy moments, we always take time to hug one another, to tease one another, to joke with one another. And that's how you heal. And I think that the revillaging that we've talked about in any space is good for the land. Alme did a mural a couple years back, and it was in this crazy little dirty alley outside of one of our museums up in our area. And every morning we would roll in with the trailer, and we would pull all the stuff out, and like slowly during the day, young people would come by, both native and non-native. Different people would stop by and help paint and chit-chat and talk. And over that 2 or 3 week period, we really revillaged even this little alley space by being there. It was our responsibility to that place to be there in a good way. And so I think that's, when I think about the work that we carry, all the people that were on the advisory committee, all the people that were curating, all the people at the museum, all of us, I think, are doing our best to show up in a good way and represent different sides of the picture and different sides of the story. And that's how you revillage, because we're one another's neighbors now, so we have to learn to revillage together. And I also want to just thank Brian for sharing. I think it's important to acknowledge that we balance these things with what we have responsibility for at home. So if we think the conversations with you all are hard, where we have to try and tell a little bit about who we are, we also hold a responsibility to go make sure that our community is good with what we're doing. I think that's the thing that both inspires us and also gives us the responsibility and the power, but it's hard. You know, there's items that we're putting on display sometimes where we have to make sure people feel good about it and understand the intent. And sometimes we have to correct if we've done something a little bit wrong or we get feedback from others. So we really do this for, like Alme said, for our future generations, to see all the kids there that we had a big crew drive down and to see them all there in their basket caps and their beads last night and interacting with the folks at the opening. You know, there's a power in that. This picture here, and then I think we'll end, kind of relates to when our young people pack medicine. At the very end of a ceremony that we've had to heal a sick child, on the last night we start dancing at dusk and we go all night long, different camps. We take turns and then we finish up in the morning. And there's 2 young people who have been represented or who have been selected to represent carrying the medicine to send the prayers back up to help heal that sick child. And they worked with our medicine people to do that. And this is their footprints as they pack that medicine back and forth. And I think it's in those footprints that we bring that good energy, the footprints we leave across the work. So with that, I think that's all we have. But thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Pimm and Alme, for sharing with us this morning and for all of your guidance and collaboration on this project. And Pimm and Alme are technically advisors, but they also sort of bridged into the curator role with us. So now I will welcome the rest of the co-curatorial group to the stage. Would you all please come join me? We have Joseph or Woody Aguilar here. Come on up. And we have Meyokeeskow or Marrufo here, Sherrie Smith-Ferri, Will writing in. Please join us. Yes, thank you. Absolutely, good idea. Let's give them a round of applause. So we have some questions that we'll sort of be talking through today to talk about the project and hopefully chat with each other a little bit. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have questions at the end, and we look forward to speaking with all of you as well. So to start, could you all please introduce yourselves and maybe share how you got involved with the project and why? And do you want to start, Woody, since we started on this end already? Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joseph Aguilar. Most people know me as Woody, my nickname. I'm from San Ildefonso, Pueblo in New Mexico, which is about a half-hour drive north of Santa Fe. my background is in archaeology. I've been doing archaeology for, I'll date myself, 20 plus years now. And I initially became involved in this project as an advisor to the Weisel catalog, which was an awesome project. Brian spoke to the significance of that work. And when we got to the end of that project, we had this on the horizon. Hillary kindly offered to me to be a part of this team, and I gladly accepted just because of the very rich and positive experience I had with the Weisel catalog project. And so yeah, it's been great.
Hi, my name is Meyokeeskow Marrufo. I go by Mio, but I've recently started to make people say my full name. My name means beautiful day, and I shortened it so that it was easier to say. I answer to Mio, but I am Eastern Pomo from the Clear Lake Basin, and I think of myself as the wild card. I was the one they took a chance on. A lot of the people that you see around me are very well educated in anthropology, archaeology, museum studies. I went to San Francisco State for museum studies and somehow became an environmental director and cultural resource manager for 25 years. And then went back into museums and curating. So I was invited by Hillary and Sherrie, and they said, come to the gallery, come join us, come see. And I was like, okay, are you sure? And they're, yeah, let's come join. And I was like, okay, I don't know if I had anything to add. Yeah, I have a large Pomo voice. I had a lot to add. It's been great to be on the team. And that's what it is. It's a team. This is a team effort. No one voice made this all happen. It was all of ours. And that's how it came to happen. So anyways, Mio Marrufo, Eastern Pomo.
Hi, I'm Sherrie Smith-Ferri. I'm Dry Creek Pomo and Bodega Bay Miwok, so Sonoma County girl. I have worked in museums for longer than I want to acknowledge. And one of the great joys of working that long is to actually see how radically the field has changed. And there are opportunities and things happening now that I truly didn't believe I would live long enough to see. So it's an exciting time. I was asked to join this project. I got a phone call from Hillary, and I had some questions for her, really along the lines of what Brian was talking about. Once you've been around for a while, you've been involved in projects where really, and I started to refuse to do this, where you just were kind of expected to be a rubber stamp. There was this expectation that, you were on the institutional side, you were expected to consult with tribal members, and a lot of times the consulting meant that I would get this call and they would say, could you consult? And then when I would say yes, they would come in and basically they had it all done. They just wanted me to say, that looks fine. And that was not what I had in mind. That is not consulting. So one of my questions from Hillary was, really like, I don't have time to waste anymore. I'm getting old, I don't want to be involved in something where that's going to happen. And she assured me that that wouldn't happen. And I was also like, I'm going to be pushy in some areas. Are you okay with that? She was like, that's fine. And I probably was pushy in some areas, but it's been a good experience. And I'm very pleased with sort of getting here to the end.
Hello again. My name is Pimm Tripp-Allen. I'm Karuk and Yurok, And my husband and I became involved when Hillary and Sherrie and Mio came up to Northern California to look at different artists' work as they decided to include a California portion of this show. They decided to start in the north, and it will eventually cover different parts of the state. And as Alme had mentioned, my family has been involved in cultural revitalization movement to bring back culture and language and health and education over the last couple decades. But one of my uncles, Brian Tripp, who's in the show today, was an artist during that time. So on top of bringing back culture and working on other things, he was also an artist and did that his whole life. And so I've been really fortunate, like you said, Sherrie, the art shows that I grew up in and with Mio's mom and different folks were like ragtag events in our studios, or then later on when we were super sophisticated, we get into our tribal health centers and put exhibits up. And so to be here at the De Young doing this work on behalf of those folks and actually being able to be part of this team has been really amazing. So like you said, to be here is pretty astounding, and I'm excited to see what happens in the future. Oh, you guys have
Hello, everyone. My name is Will Ridingen. I'm a Pawnee in Santa Ana, Pueblo. I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. My background's in museum studies. I got my master's in museum studies from the University of New Mexico. And I was doing a lot of research on Pueblo pottery. And I was recommended to this project by my friend Brian Vallo. I had just graduated with my master's, and I began this post-fellowship or postgraduate fellowship at the Gilcrease Museum in Tulsa. And I was doing a lot of work with their Plains collection and then their Pueblo pottery collection too. And I'm also an artist myself. I'm a potter. And so, Brian reached out to me and told me a little bit about the project. And then I got a call from Hillary. And, they showed me the collection online. And I saw, their magnificent collection of Pueblo pottery and flat style artwork. And I was sold. So, it's been an honor to be a part of this project. This is really how I got how I started off my curatorial career. And I've got to work with these wonderful colleagues, and I've learned so much from them, and they've all been great mentors. So I just want to say thank you to you all.
Once again, Alme Allen, and I'm a multimedia artist, and like Brian was saying, there's no name for art in our language. And the old people, when we talked to them about that, the concept of art just wasn't a thing. Weavers and carvers and painters, but no specific name for art. So we understand that inherently Indigenous people really don't see it that way. A lot of our art is very utilitarian. And so I come from that vein of the work. I just do work with my hands. I create things. But I got invited in, Hillary and Mio and Sherrie, thank you very much, when they came up to visit my artwork, and we started talking about the connections in the community. And, it was just an honor to represent our area that way, and make those connections for this exhibition. And for myself, just to be included in a show at the De Young, how big of a deal is that for somebody like me? That dirty-faced Indian kid. And I really had these ideas. I told Hillary, I want to carve the canoe ornament, that big fancy piece on the nice boats, and I wanted to show up in a certain light. I had a vision for myself. But as we started working with the curation, the desire to create something new went to the wayside, and the desire to make these galleries speak a certain way became the priority for me. And so I just want to say that I feel that was a more beneficial use of my time, was to work in that setting with y'all. So thank you.
I still want to see that canoe prow, though. It will look beautiful.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, one day.
A couple of them.
And I'll just share a bit about myself as well. I'm Hillary Olcott, curator of the Arts of the Americas here. As Tom Campbell said in the beginning, I started here in 2014, 11 years ago, as a curatorial assistant. I never kind of expected to be here. I studied archaeology undergraduate. I'm trained as an archaeologist and studied art history and got my master's in art and museum studies. And so I used to work at Dumbarton Oaks, which is a very small but beautiful museum in Washington, D.C., working with the pre-Hispanic collection, and that was the original area that I worked in. I did archaeology in South America. And so I came here because of the Mesoamerican items that are here, and that was the first area that I really worked with. I had the privilege of working on the exhibition about Teotihuacan that we had, and after that, the institution received this very generous gift from Mr. Weisel, and the needs of the collection sort of shifted, and I ended up spending a lot of my time working with the Native American art collection. And I'll be honest, I was very, very naive when I came into this job about what it means to hold and care for Native American cultural items. And I'm not Native. My family is mixed Eastern European, English, and Jewish heritage. I grew up on the East Coast. And so even my knowledge of California Native history was very small when I came here. So when I've learned a lot in my time, I'm very grateful to all of these amazing people who have mentored me and others through the years, and thank you. And when we started this journey, I very much wanted our project to be a collaborative one from the beginning. I saw the benefit of working collaboratively on the Weisel catalog book and wanted to bring that into the galleries. And so in building our team, we had been really hoping for a group that brought different perspectives. So as you can see, we're from different generations, we're from different places, we're from different backgrounds. And I'm really pleased that you're all here. We're all here together today. So on to the first question, and we might not all answer all of these questions, but we'll kind of throw them around as we want to. You all work in a lot of different cultural spaces, and this here is, of course, a fine arts museum. And so given that that is a fine arts museum rather than maybe an anthropological museum or a cultural museum, were there special considerations from your perspective about the curation of this project?
I'll take that question, Hillary, only because I already knew it was coming to me. So this morning, I thought about this question while I was having some coffee. And so my background is in anthropology with a concentration in archaeology. So I've been thinking about these things throughout all my time in college and graduate school. And anthropology, like in its broadest sense, is the study of people, right? People's cultures, histories, material worlds. So, and this is going to challenge some of you like art historians in here. And others who are like in the fine arts museum. So whether a museum focuses on art or history or science or technology, ultimately what museums do is they engage with human creativity, perception, and interactions with other people and the environment. So every museum, like whether it focuses on art or dinosaurs or air and space, really functions anthropologically, in my view. Even objects that aren't considered to be anthropological, quote unquote, in nature, those gain significance through our framing of those objects. They're given meaning and significance through people's framing of those objects. So in that sense also, museums function anthropologically. And so by studying like how we as curators, how museums navigate those ideas is in itself an anthropological kind of thought process. So this exhibit in particular then, in my view, and the museum really, it's about people, it's about cultures, it's about community. And this exhibition in particular it's about generations of people, right? It's not just about people in a certain moment. It's about people from the deep past, from the present, and even the future. So I like to blur the lines between anthropology and art history, ethnography, because really in the end, museums are about people. This exhibit is about people. It's about community. And we should really visit these spaces with that in mind. And keep in mind that I speak for myself, that it's not my representation. I try to narrate my community through these objects and through these interpretations. So that's my response to whether or not these spaces are anthropological or not.
I wanted to add to that too. I think it's also about systems of knowledge. All of those objects are the product of really sophisticated understandings of the natural world around you. And I would say, anybody that knows me knows that I'm a basket person. And so I was, Mio's going, oh yeah. And so, one of the things that is so essential and so unappreciated in basketry is all the ethnobotanical knowledge that goes into making a basket. By the time you actually have harvested and prepared your material, you are almost done with your basket. And so, you just multiply that out by all the other kinds of materials that are in that pieces that you see in the exhibit. And I think spend some time sort of realizing just how much sort of information on a whole bunch of different levels has passed through the generations and enabled the artist to make that.
Any other thoughts? I want to share, at some point, not that long ago, Sherrie shared with us I'll call it a meme, but it was, not really a meme. It was an image of an iceberg floating in the water. And the top of the iceberg that you can see above the water was sort of the material culture, the art, the items from a community that we see. And then as we know, of course, the tip of the iceberg is only a very small portion of it, and there's a lot more under the water. And all of the iceberg that is under the water is all of that cultural knowledge, all of that way of knowing, all of that intergenerational culture that communities hold and carry through. And so I always think of that now when I think of these things that we see. Okay, moving on. So from your perspective, what is unique about this project? And did you have a top goal or priority in your work here? I think Mio was looking for a microphone.
That's all right. So the goal. My goal when I came in to this project was to revision this exhibit so that it shows us as a living people. There's so many beautiful objects in here. And the first part of the goal was we need to integrate some living objects. We need to put in those contemporary artists that are still here and still making art, and to have them come in and show. And then we mix it with the historical art so that there's context in how a people continue. So when I came in, I was like, I'm Pomo, so of course I was like Sherrie. I'm like, where's the baskets? Show me the baskets. Show me them. I know this basket weaver. I know that basket weaver. But really it was, okay, so we have all these beautiful objects here at this museum. Now, how do we show people that come in that this is alive? How do we, so how do we show within 200 miles I'd say about 200 miles of this museum, every elementary school comes through. Out of those elementary schools, there are so many Native kids that come in, because I was one of them. And they come in and they see objects. How do we rewrite this story so that when they come in, they look at these objects and they go, that's us. That's who we are. And they look at their classmates who are looking at every other museum in the entire state of California that shows the history of colonization to its best light. How do we get our kids to be able to look at their classmates and say, this is us. This is who we are. And those other kids that they school with, they live in the same communities, look at them and go, wow, you guys do this? You know, that's a goal. That's the reason why I curate. Because I want my people to see themselves as the beautiful artists that they really are. And like they always say, well, we're not artists. We don't have, we don't consider ourselves artists. And I'm like, if what you do is something, you're an artist. Whether you're a basket weaver, whether you're, a carver, a potter, anything like that, you're still an artist because what you're creating is beauty of our people in our world. And I want to show that, and I wanted us to show that, but I wanted us to add that living voice into it so that when our kids come in, and that's really a goal for me, is when our kids come in, they say, this is who we are. This is, because when I came into this museum when I was young, many years ago, I didn't have that feeling. And I tease everybody, and because I've been quoted as saying, a lot of beautiful things made by a lot of dead people. But that was true. When I came into this museum, I didn't associate myself with the objects in those cases. I was disassociated from them. And if you came last night and you heard the laughter, and you heard the abalone jingling as women walked around and men walked around, as you heard some of the dresses that people were making or wearing, if you heard that, hey, how are you doing this and this, that was living people enjoying a living space. And that was people that were looking at these objects and saying, that's us. And that was my goal. And we've accomplished it to a certain point. We need to keep working on it. So the perspective, the goal, the uniqueness of this is that we were able to work and able to bring that to fruition. And it took us 3 years of meetings and back and forth and visits and everything, but we did it. And you get to see it now. If you walk into that space and you don't see a living people, you call me, let me know. Let me know and give me some opinions on how we can do better. Because this museum, like all of our history, is an evolving museum. This is continuous. In a year time, you're going to see some of the baskets change out. In 3 years' time, you're going to see the California region move probably. So we're going to constantly, because we want this museum to be that living resource so that not only you can come in and visit it, but your children can see who they are with it. Thank you.
And I'm going to piggyback on that just because I would say my top priority was making sure that Native California was represented, because I was one of those kids that came to the museum and wanted to have something that I recognized from home and just didn't feel it. or see it. And especially, growing up during a time like Alme and Pimm were talking about, when there was such a revitalization and just excitement and joy in the Native California community, in the art worlds, contemporary people, artists coming and spreading their wings and starting to fly, and knowing just the beauty of California Native art, both past and present, and really that tremendous sort of vitality that was hidden away in just these small communities. And it just was like, it needs to be here and represented. And this is a world-class art is being produced right here. We need to see it in the museum. It needs to have its own space. So being able to do that, the institution essentially sort of building that gallery was tremendous. And come back, because things will change. Just like Mio said, you'll get to take a trip around the state.
I wanted to piggyback on that too. She said it so nicely. I thought California should be. We were like, "You're in California. How come you don't have? There's 140 plus tribes, And but really,
It wasn't quite. I mean, it wasn't quite like it. Wasn't quite that, but yeah.
But the other curators agreed. They're like, if you came to our area, we would want you to highlight our people. And so we were able to. Sherrie, she did. She pushed it, and I was like, "God, Sherrie, should we do that? Can we be pushy like that?" And she was like, "Absolutely." I was like, "That's usually me."
Any other thoughts on this?
I think another thing to piggyback off my colleagues, for me at least, was really that educational message we wanted to send away with our visitors. I think here at the De Young, there's such a high visitorship of local and international visitors. So it was really the opportunity to provide that educational information, even if it's one thing, even if they learn one thing about basketry or pottery or knowing what Karuk art looks like. That's really important, because when these visitors leave, they're likely to tell their friends and family what they saw or take pictures. I think there's a lot of voice in this exhibition. There's community voices, there's the curatorial voices, but there's also the Indigenous scholars we work with too. So there's many different perspectives in this exhibition. And, I think we got our point through. And I'm, really happy with the way it turned out.
So I think that's a good segue to another topic we were hoping to talk about today. And we've touched on it a little bit in our conversation so far, but can we be a little bit more specific maybe about how did or does cultural stewardship inform this exhibition?
Yeah, I'll take this one. So when we first came to the De Young 3 years ago, Brian and Sherrie provided a presentation on cultural stewardship and handling some of these items. And, I thought that was so impactful, not only for myself, but for the staff to hear from the communities in which these collections are represented, by artists, by these knowledge keepers. And, I think even during install, when some of the curators came, they're providing that knowledge again, how things should be handled, how things should be stored, cultural protocol on just taking care of these items. And I think that's something that we implemented from the very start of this exhibition.
Yeah, and speaking to that, there's an item out there on display, ceremonial blade from our way, up our way, that's used in world renewal. be used in white deerskin dance. It can be used in Taloa Neidash. But either way, it's like it's a significant, specifically ceremonial item that has its own purpose and intent, like many of these objects. And when we discovered that that was in the collection, it was one of the things that was brought forth. I sort of really that drew my attention in as a ceremonial leader, the responsibility to address that and what we are going to do with that. Because in our way, we understand that these things need to come out. They need to be at ceremony or they cry. And so there was a cultural obligation that I felt to talk about this item, take it back to my community, not physically, but take the conversations back to my community, other cultural leaders, and say, hey, you know, this is down there, and really, I have this vision of like having it on display. We have the potential of having it on display, pulling it out of that dusty drawer, or it's been crying, and bring it out and have it there. And you know, it was just one of those things that really, I don't know. When I was talking about putting my own art aside and investing my energy into this exhibition and giving it that care and those considerations was really important to me. And in that process, you know, the vision of bringing Robert Benson's blade carving into it, so you could see a contemporary riff on what a ceremonial blade is, and then, you know, this really beautiful carving that's painted, and you know, I wanted that to happen. It's these things you kind of speak into existence, right? And so I was really hopeful, and I was really excited in the end that it was able to happen, because you don't always know with cultural items whether it's going to happen or not. That's our understanding in our interactions with museums. There's protocols behind that. But for myself, I don't get into those protocols. I get into the specific protocols from our people. How do we handle this? Because understanding an item like that might be different than like the Lizzie Hickox was made for the curio trade. It was made for collection. Some things came into collections at a time when things were being transferred on, or somebody moved it along for other reasons. So I want that discussion, that topic of that blade, I just want to add this because this is super important, and I know I won't have a time to talk about it later, is that when we knew it would be available for display, Lauren Baumlin and I came down and we wrapped the blade in leather. It didn't have the leather. If it dances, it has to have the leather and the strap that goes around the dancer's wrist. And so it was basically like naked. It had to be addressed. And so we did that, and we used brain tanned, deer hide, you know, we went totally natural on it. And then in the end, this crazy artist thing that I do, I had to, like, it looks too new. It's brand new leather. So I grabbed clay off of our dance floor, that image you've seen of the dance floor and those footprints. I grabbed clay off of that floor and I brought that down and I worked that into that leather. Take note of it today. We brought a piece of home to it to care for it. We sang for the blade, we danced the blade, and we got it ready.
And thank you to Lauren and to you, Alme, for that work. And I think you'll notice also that that's one of only 3 items of regalia that are on view in the 2 galleries. There are almost no ceremonial items on view. The 2 other pieces of regalia they're on loan generously from the Tripp family's collection, and we'll take care of them while they're here. And the other items are not ceremonial, and that was very intentional for us. And we wanted to celebrate. I think in the past there was often museums favored items that were really used by communities in those words, and the items that were made for curio trade, for the art market, were somehow not as interesting. But we honor those artists and the knowledge that they carry and the skill that they had and the vision that they had and have, and also recognize the interconnectedness that those are completely linked to the knowledge and the cultures and communities that they all come from. So you'll notice that, I think, in the gallery too.
Just a random artist thought, there's a difference between bought and paid for and brought and prayed for.
Oh,
And
beautiful.
yeah, and anyway, just passing it on.
We did a part of being the curators or cultural consultants or whatever you want to call us, is we did a walkthrough with the staff yesterday morning, and I got an interesting question. When you go into the gallery, we call it Pot Island. Because there's all these beautiful pots, but there's baskets on there. So what he was saying, maybe Vessel Island, I don't know. We call it Pot Island. And this young woman came up and she asked me, those are all vessels. What do they hold? How are you filling them? What are they? They're empty. And I go, are they? Are they really empty? Because for us, they now hold, and I don't mean to sound corny, and I don't mean to sound like I'm making things up, but now they hold the hopes and dreams of what we expect for the future. They hold things now. They're very well filled. When you go into that space, you can look at them. They don't look dead. They look alive. They look like they're filled again. And so, yes, we have a pot island. We have vessels that are seemingly empty, but they actually hold a lot.
It's also technically a peninsula, not an island. Yeah, that name unfortunately has really stuck. It came up in our planning process. So kind of following that, a lot of you we have a TIPO officer here, a tribal historic preservation officer. We have people who have worked with their communities, with other cultural institutions. So to you, is there an ideal model of cultural stewardship that museums can follow, can have, and what does that look like?
I'll start that one. First of all, I'm the TIPO officer, which is a very new role. And we tend to talk in acronyms a lot in the tribal world. So that's a Tribal Historic Preservation Officer, which is a mouthful. So everybody just calls us TIPOs. It's a different side of the coin than most of my professional life, which has been working in museums, as I said earlier. But I would say I think back to, in terms of kind of like what's a good stewardship model, I think back to one of my really early memories of a museum experience, which was with my grandmother. I was just 16. I had gotten my driver's license. I was happy to drive you anywhere. And my grandmother got an invitation to go visit collections at a Bay Area museum that shall remain nameless. And she needed a ride. And she's like, honey, will you take me down? I'm like, oh, sure. So we went down and went into the museum and went into their storage area. And they opened, kind of the cabinets in this case. And my grandmother started crying. And which my grandmother was not a person that cried easily. And I was like, and she just said, so I was concerned. And she just held on to me and she said, oh, my people, oh, my people. And she was sad because of the baskets, they were kind of all jammed into these, piled inside of each other, kind of jammed in there. And as Alme was saying, they were crying. And if there's one thing I could say is, take care of those objects have spirit. They, don't take care of them as if they were your grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure that there's like an ideal model of collection stewardship or even exhibitions, because each museum in the country and the world that holds collections of Native American art or material culture, cultural patrimony, their positionality in relation to Native communities, it's different everywhere. And so that relationship first, I think, has to be acknowledged, maybe repaired in some cases. And each collection, each culture, each Native American culture has its own protocols. So collection stewardship, exhibitions, they have to be culturally specific to the communities in which museums work with. And all this work takes time. So I think if there's one baseline here for collection stewardship or creating exhibitions is investing in the time it takes to build the trust and relationships for Native folks to open up and become a real part of the process, a partner in the process.
Further thoughts? Neo, you look like you have one.
Yeah, sure. Cultural stewardship, if we tell you one particular way to do it, then it's not cultural stewardship. Cultural stewardship is about learning about the people, like Woody said. It's about making sure the items are stored properly, like Sherrie said. It's taking into account the number of different types of people here. There's no one way to say, oh, I'm gonna treat your pottery the same as I treat my baskets. I'm gonna treat, one tribe the same way I treat, and that's really just stepping backwards in time, because we need to start recognizing the differences. This is why traditional ecological knowledge is so important, because it takes place-based science, it takes systematic management, factual observation, culture, past and present, our ethnic identities. It takes all of that into account. And when we're talking about cultural stewardship, we're talking about taking all that into account. And to take all that into account is to recognize that there are differences in the items that you have in your museum. And that is probably the one takeaway of cultural stewardship, is to recognize that there are different cultures.
Thank you. So is there something that you want to share today that any of you maybe learned from this project and process, or that you take away from it?
That's a really good question. I think one thing that stood out the most for me for this project was really working with our artists for this exhibition. On one hand, they're continuing, cultural preservation through the traditional art forms that are represented, but also, was working collaboratively with them, gaining insights, co-authoring some of these labels with them. That's so important to represent their work in the manner in which they want. And I think this exhibition, was so collaborative. We worked with all of the artists, many communities, we worked with each other. And, I think without the artists, the show wouldn't be what it is.
Yeah. Thanks, Will. Any other reflections? Shall we move on? Yeah?
I as a joke, but I mean it, I really enjoyed working with the folks from the Southwest. I think that, we often see our art, we see your art, but I don't always have a chance to engage. So even in that, I really appreciated that process and have a deeper understanding of the history of that artwork and art form. And so I mean that. And I appreciated that cultural exchange that happened outside of the museum, but actually happened between Indigenous communities and what that might mean going forward as well.
Thanks, Pimm.
Yeah, real quick. So just speaking to the team, the inner dynamics, it was really a good experience to work with you guys on this. And the first session we had, and Hillary, thank you so much. You do the job. You are herding cats as like artists. And so I could say that a little bit for the curation team, although we're pretty profesh. The first session we were a little tight. We're so generous to each other's backgrounds that we were really listening more than we were probably talking. The second time we met, things loosened up. We got each other a little bit more, and we weren't afraid to put our thoughts into those working sessions and each other's humor, which is really important for Native people that happens. And so I just that was my share in this experience, is that by the time we got to that second in-person session, that I really felt that we were moving to where it needed to go, and creatively sharing out the label process to it, so it came from multi-voices instead of just one singular, as the museum is speaking to you. It's all of these Indigenous people speaking through that.
I do have one more thing I'd like to add. I think just as this curatorial team, we're mostly Pueblo and California natives, and I think that's really representative in Paw Island, with the pots and baskets coming together, just like the dynamics of this group.
Woody?
Yeah, and I think the vibe, if you will, of the team was really important to this process, because if we didn't mesh and kind of sync together like Alme had described, this work wouldn't have flowed as well. It would have been done, and like Alme said again, so I'm a child of the '80s, and like I see our team like as like Voltron. I don't know if any of you guys know Voltron. Voltron is a animated series about like robotic lions that form together, and so like we're all the lions, and like when Voltron forms, like one of those lions like forms the head, and like Hillary, when Voltron forms, like Hillary is the head. She's like the brains of all of this, and like so like we would come to take part in our in-person sessions, and then we would leave, right? And who remained back were like, it was Hillary and Christina, and Hillary had all the little fires to put out here at the museum while we were back home, back in our spaces. So I'll just take this opportunity to give Hillary that shout out, because
Thank you.
she was really at the center of all of this.
Thanks, Woody. I'm a child of the 90s, so I always go to Go Power Rangers for us.
So what he means is we came in and we're like, we want this, 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 and this. And then she would go, okay, I will figure out how to present that. And she did. We were heard. This has been really great to... And I don't mean to wax lyrical and make things sound like everything was great. It wasn't all great. The colors that you see on the wall were were an issue.
None
We
of these
wanted
ones
to
are
paint
good.
the entire gallery, but no, we couldn't do that. But you know,
you picked the green though.
I got my green. That's right. That's right. Can I tell you guys where that green came from?
Yeah.
So originally we had talked about the green, and if you turn Melissa Cody's, if you go to the other side of the wall, there's a button blanket. And so when we talked about putting shots of color here and there, we really wanted to. We're like, it's institutional gray. We want something else. And so we're trying to come up with these colors, And so I floated the idea of forest green, because everything looks good in the forest. And I was thinking, and there were like the other teams in the departments were like, green, that's a red and black blanket. That's a this and this. And I'm like, no, it'll work. Those Northerners always put their stuff against the needles, and it always looks good. And we were having a Zoom meeting, and it was Will, because we're like, we want a green. We're really focused on green. I was pushing it. I want chartreuse green, but no. And I go, we need a different green. They don't like the dark green. We need a different green. And Will goes, well, I go, what about you guys? And he goes, well, and he pans his camera out the window, and we're like, that's it, right there, desert greens. And so we got a palette of desert greens, high mesa greens, all the different kinds of greens that are in the desert, and we're like, everything looks good against that also. And that green is called avocado?
Guacamole.
Oh, guacamole. That green is called guacamole, and it's so unguacamole, it's crazy. I wouldn't eat guacamole that dark. But this is actually the color of some of the greenery that was outside of his window. And we pulled those shades, and we pulled other shades that are in the California room or the California gallery, and then worked with them on the pedestals and such. So it wasn't all fun. I know I make it sound like, oh, we were all just, Honolulu. I'm a child of the 70s. I went Puff the Magic Dragon, sorry. But there were a lot of good moments. There were a lot of this team, because I worked with Sherrie and Robert Gary on the Jules Tavernier exhibit. And when we worked with the New York team, it was very different. And when we came to the De Young, we were heard. And we were able to do some of the things that we really wanted to do to make that exhibit work. So when Sherrie was like, come to the De Young, I was like, okay, and I was like, oh, wait, that's the good museum. We'll go there, yeah. And we were heard. So, yeah.
Thank you.
The head of Voltron.
I know, I love
By
that
the way,
for myself.
Voltron's eyes are like lasers, aren't they?
I like that even
Don't
more.
they destroy? Yeah.
So we're running out of time. We have 5 minutes left. So let's do our next two as kind of lightning round. We'll just go quickly. What is your favorite artwork and why? Quickly. Let's go around.
I'm not going to say it's my favorite because there's so many beautiful pieces in the show, but the piece I'll highlight today are two pieces because I'm not going to follow the rules. But they're complementary to one another. So in the California space, we have a beaded bib by Karen Noble, and that was made in the early 80s, and then a hair tie made by Lena Baumlin, medicine person for the Karuk ceremonies, to match that. And the reason I love that piece, and it's the piece that we lent to the show, and it was really emotional to drop it off. When we brought it in, I thought it would just be, business, like I can dress up and pretend to be able to function in these spaces. And we came to drop it off, and Teji was with me, and I had to leave the room because we've never had that piece out of our possession since we got it. And I cried because it's a piece we use at ceremony every year, and we didn't have it this year, but we felt it was that important So I made Taisha go take care of it, though, because I always bring her along for my emotional support. So she went and put root with it, and I went outside and cried, and we talked about it later. But the reason I highlight that piece real quickly is because it's a piece that brings together like really contemporary art motifs. It's got these like designs that you wouldn't have found a long time ago in this piece. And when she first brought this piece out, it was the first of its kind. And my mom and dad gifted it to my sister. I think I got to wear it first though, but they gifted it to my sister. And then Lena made the hair tie. And the other cool part of it is usually those hair ties come in sets. We wear them on each side and on our braids during our ceremonies. But my sister only liked to wear one braid. She was really rotten that way. And so Lena made her a beaded hair tie so she could wear it. But I love it because I would think about the anthropological piece, and I think like in 200 years, or if they had found this piece, all the things they would have said it meant to us. And really, it was just because my sister liked one braid, and and Lena made it for her high school graduation to match that beautiful bib that we dance. And the footprints that you saw, it was worn by many of the young girls when they pack medicine there. And you'll see if you're here for the demonstration today, 2 more of those kind of beaded capes of the just few that exist in the world like that.
And that is happening at 2 p.m. in Wilsey Court.
Lightning round. I'll try to do 2 really quick. So someday you might have to fight for what you believe in. Someday you might have to fight for what you believe in, by Brian D. Tripp. So we're happy as a family to be part of this acquisition here to the De Young. And Brian Tripp pieces on canvas are rare. And so to find this and it to be homed here is really important to us back home. And really for the selection of this piece, it not just the title speaks, but the colorway and everything that it represents. But as I told Hillary during this process is that we as a family feel very, very good that Uncle's work is here now. And when we visit, whether it's on display or not, we know that it's this close to home. And that means a lot. And of course, the title itself, I think we're at that time. Once again, we have to fight for it.
Yeah.
Lightning round. Rick Bartow, 17-foot piece. Rick, understanding his story. And that, as a Wiyot person. And he gave me these carving tools when we rebuilt the dance house in 2000. He understood that I was heading up the project. He goes, here, take these adzes. He uses them for his carvings and whatnot. He goes, you'll use them. And so we use them. And so he passes this knowledge along to me. And, I understand who he is. This guy is like a guy that's already crossed over and has his own art market out there, which is rare for us. And he invited me up to carve with him in Reedsport, Oregon. And I never made it up there to carve with Rick. And it's a regret I have. So I try to live my life without regrets, which is really hard. But each time I go out on these projects and we rebuild villages or I carve, I have Rick's ads in my case. It doesn't come out. I don't swing it, but it's there. He's standing there with me in everything I do. So I just wanted to pass that along. Here we go.
Ooh, this is hard. I also have 2. Just kidding. No, for me, I think it was about a week after we had made our final selections for the checklist. And one of the pots on display is Lonnie Vigil's. And about a week after, I ran into him at an art show. And I introduced myself to him. And I told him that one of his pots was selected for the exhibition. So he invited me to sit down and sit next to him. And we chatted for about an hour. And he, told me this incredible story about how he made that pot. He remembered it. He told me a little bit about his artistic process. And, he shared this wonderful story of how the museum purchased it directly from him in the early 90s. His work is so phenomenal, the way he's able to make such thin-walled pots. And, we co-authored that label together. And he wrote something really beautiful where he says that his pot is its clothing is the smoke cloud seen on the shoulder of the pot. So that's my favorite.
Woody? Oh, Sherrie?
I'll follow up a little bit with what Alme said. So the last part of your question was, and I'll start there, sort of what are we proud of achieving?
Yeah, sure.
I would say one of my real hopes for this institution, and sort of, I wouldn't say nefarious, but sort of where I was hurting the institution was to try and establish relationships, to get out into Native California, to learn to know the artists and the cultural bearers, for the institution to start to establish relationships with them that would continue on. It gives an opportunity for that to happen, but that continues on, and part of that was the whole acquisitions process. So I come from working in kind of a background of usually small museums that have very limited resources. So when I found out that the DeYoung had acquisition funds that they wanted to spend, I was like, oh, let me get that. So it has really pleased me that we were able to work with you to be able to purchase one of, speaking as an institutional voice, the DeYoung was able to purchase the Brian Tripp painting and the Rick Bartow painting and the Cape by Shoshone Hassler. And so there's other acquisitions looming on the horizon, we hope. Yeah. But that has been, I think, a really significant part of and will continue to be a significant part of putting this together that will bear fruit in the future. And now the museum can, because there was so little contemporary Native art that you had in your collections, so absolutely, these can now be used in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah.
And then in terms of my favorite piece, and it's one of my favorites, I'm the same way. I can't necessarily pick just one, but I will say, not surprisingly, it's a basket. And it's a basket by Linda Yamani.
Yeah.
And it just came
less
than a week
Monday.
ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And please go look at it in the gallery. And so Linda's an Ohlone weaver, and she has single-handedly brought back, it's not just a beautiful work of art, but it's a real statement of hope and revitalization, and makes me smile when I go by it. It's a thing of beauty, and it's a real labor of love that has taken decades, in terms of all the work that Linda has done to work on restoring and honoring her past and bringing it to the present. So thank you, Linda.
Mia, what do you want to
Oh,
wrap us up?
I don't have a favorite. I can't choose, and I won't choose. I really like each one of the pieces in the exhibition have their own story, have their own significance, have their own meaning. Each person who created each one of those pieces in there, one is no more significant than any other, and they're all part of a larger story. And I find it difficult, if not impossible, to choose one piece over another. It's not my place.
So how do I tell you my two pieces? Set me up. That was actually really beautiful. It was. My two pieces. No, actually, the Porty Blake was behind me, or George Blake. I really love that piece because it shows how an artist can go to different realms. This is a basket weaver people that have made pottery. This is a carver that made pottery. He was here yesterday. He also was a silver jeweler. But I really do love that piece, and he was kind enough to loan us that piece. That is one of my favorite pieces because it shows how diverse, we can be. The other piece is the L. Frank Manriquez Condor. That is one of my favorite pieces, not only because I've known Elle a heck of a long time, but because when I asked her to tell me about that piece, she talked about the resilience of her people and that her people are coming back much like the condor. And that condor kite is representational to her of it. To me, it represents just how far the young would go. The Tongva are historically unfederally recognized. They probably, quite honestly, never will be because their land is LA. And much like the Ohlone, gonna get Bay Area back. It's a matter of property prices and a matter of private properties. But the fact that I could say L. Frank Manriquez was doing these condor kites, I sent a picture and Hillary was like, we want one of those. And I was like, well, she's federally unrecognized. And the thing was, and? Is she recognized in her community as a Native artist? Is she, the Tongva, just because they're not recognized doesn't mean they don't exist. And that's why I love that piece, because that's just one of many pieces that will come in here over time. And it's very representational about who we are. We're breaking federal boundaries. We're breaking barriers. And we are still here, and we'll be here after those federal boundaries.
And thank you, Elle, for loaning that to us. All right, well, that was not very speedy lightning. I apologize, everyone. But so we do have 5 minutes for questions. And before as we go into our question period, I also want to invite and thank our amazing advisors who are here with us today to join us for our question and answer. We have Brian Vallo, who we already heard from today. Brian, if you'd like to come up, please. We have Bruce Bernstein here, who is a senior scholar from the School for Advanced Research in Santa Fe. And we have Christina Helmick, who is the curator in charge of the Department of the Arts of Africa, Oceania, and the Americas here at the Fine Arts Museums. And I also want to acknowledge our advisor, Jonathan Cordero, the executive director of the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone, who is not here today. But maybe we can give a round of applause before we go into our question and answers. Any questions from the audience? We have some microphones to pass around if anyone wants to share or ask a question for our group. Oh, and I want to put this on so we remember our names.
Well, I think this was very, very, excuse me.
Sorry, I don't know who's where, anybody, I can't see anything.
here.
Oh, yes.
This was very exciting. And this isn't so much a question, but a request. We've been members of the museums for many, many, many years. And we've seen impressionist work, we've seen glass work, we've seen textiles, and it's all interesting. And it's always been my favorite, but I'm bored. And I am so excited about learning about indigenous creations from the past and the living, and to have more talks like this so the learning can continue, not just for our population, but for our children and our grandchildren. And I just hope we get to do this again. And I hope that if you have a fundraiser, that there's a special area so that you can bring more art in like this, more creations like this, and that you'll have talks so that we can learn about what you brought in.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. I want to take a moment before we move to another, just a nice plug. We received a very generous grant from the CORA Foundation to support a new educational curriculum for our school groups. We've been working with some Indigenous educators to build that, and also a public program series for the next 3 years, so stay tuned. Yes, up there, and then I have one in the front.
I just had a quick question on how you determined which indigenous tribes you decided upon to show their pieces in the collection.
Does someone in the group want to speak to that? Our object selection process?
God. I'm looking around like museum professionals? No. So I don't necessarily know that we would have said, oh, let's pick this tribe. What we did was look at the object list of all of the holdings that the Diung had in the indigenous collection. And we started looking at areas of the United States, the United States, Alaska, just in, everywhere in general, actually. And we started picking those pieces that stood out to cover a wider range of it. So we didn't necessarily go this tribe, this tribe, this tribe. What we did is we looked at the art itself and of the representation. There's some stonework that is very representational of certain areas. There's rugs, there's pottery, so we went through the object list of everything that they have, and we started picking it, and it wasn't easy. The first round, I think, had like 200 pieces on it, and as you can see, there's not 200 pieces in there. So, yeah.
Thanks, Mia.
Hillary, do you want to...
No? Anyone else want to add anything?
Add more?
It's a long, complex process.
And there's a question down in the front.
I just want to thank you for mentioning that San Francisco State offers museum studies, because there might be people here who can tell the young folk that they want a way to get into the museum work, that there's actually right here in San Francisco State Museum Studies. But my understanding is that you have to have pretty good grades to get into that department. It's very small, and so to alert the young people that you know to work hard to have good grades so they can get into that department, so that we can have more representation as curators.
I'm going to repeat that so that we have it in the microphone. So it was a reminder for everyone that we have a great museum studies program here at San Francisco State, but also that you need good grades to get into that program. So for our young people out there, have good grades so we can have more representation and curators in the future. Thank you.
And if I can also put into that, one of the things that I learned working on this project is we were able to work with several different Native curators, interns, so there's opportunities within the department here at the DeYoung to be able to work over this summer for a few months and get some really good experience, hands-on experience.
And we have time for one more question. Yes, right here.
Oh, it's not a question, but I wanted to put in a plug for the Native American Art Museum at University of California at Davis. They're opening a show of Rick Bartow's work next week.
Absolutely.
That will be there for the semester. So.
Thank you for that plug. Yes, we love supporting our colleagues. We'll have one more question.
Thank
Right
you.
here.
What was the... I noticed that there's a rotating exhibit, and you had mentioned it earlier. Can you talk a little bit about that process and how it's sort of like a living exhibit within itself, and what that conversation was, and what we would expect, a period from now, from today?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So the question is about our California gallery. Sherrie, our champion of the California gallery.
So one of the things that you find out doing museum work is there's kind of institutional rules that kind of guide what happens sometimes behind the scenes. And so one of the rules here is about, for conservation, anything that's labeled a textile, which includes baskets, things that have organic material, which is like a lot of California stuff, only can be on display for a year. This is a long-term installation, so it's supposed to be up for a
year and a half. Oh, the whole thing. Yeah.
And so we, instead of, so we were going to have to trade things out in that gallery anyway. And we thought this gives us an opportunity, instead of in a small space just having like one thing from different parts of California, this gives us an opportunity to let people experience different, homelands within California, different regions, and change the whole thing out. So kudos to the museum for being willing to do that.
Thank you, and we are looking for funders who want to support the next rotation. So if you know anybody, please let us know.
So yeah, in about a year, things will change out, and we'll work from the north all the way down to the south, and from the west back over to the east.
So unfortunately, we have to wrap now, but we have a full day of fun ahead. So please stick around and celebrate with us all day. Thank you so much for being here. That was sluggish lightning.